remarks.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I'd like to reflect for a minute or two on what makes us proud to be Australians. We're all here in this place proud to be Australians, or we wouldn't be here, representing the families, business owners, the investors, the elderly, the generation who will themselves sit here in these seats one day. So, what is it that we are here protecting and supporting? What is it that we are here to look at and say, that is what being Australian is all about? Let's look at some of our favourite films, our favourite days, our favourite cultural moments and our favourite traditions. I'm thinking of Gallipoli, Breaker Morant or Australia Day, Anzac Day, Phar Lap, St Mary MacKillop, even Don Bradman. They show us that Australians admire bravery. We admire and strive towards hard work, mateship and integrity. We admire honesty. Deputy Speaker, it is those values that are under attack here today in this House. First and foremost, honesty and integrity. We have learnt not to listen when the Prime Minister announces he has made things clear. He has made things clear ahead of the election when he declared that there would be no new taxes. He made things clear just long enough to be elected when suddenly there emerged a whole new kind of clarity. We could not trust the government that had been elected. A promise to get through the door is worth nothing if it's not kept. Having ditched our Australian values of honesty and integrity, this government has moved on to take a kick at other national values. Let's talk about hard work. There's a letter in my office from an 83-year-old woman from Dubbo. Nearly half a century ago, this woman and her husband bought a property near Brewarrina. Their 3 children came home on the school bus to work in the shearing shed and to lend a hand on the farm.
Good on them.
The 5 of them worked hard, and as most of us know, there's very little time for luxury when you work on the land. The couple, who are now elderly, live in Dubbo, but the dad still works on the farm that he's worked for 48 years. This hard work is now being paid back with the uncertainty and the prospect of tax gouging under changes to the capital gains tax regime as part of this bill. Farmers who have stepped into the boots of their parents and worked in the entirety of their lives on the land have been taxed every step of the way. And it's not as easy to make a quid on the land as you'd think. Now, farmers in my electorate of Parkes and across the country have been left wondering what this means for them. The National Farmers Federation have raised alarm and, with these reforms, unintentionally or otherwise, that will have a deep impact on farms and on farmers. The government can't afford to get this wrong, and I'll quote from the National Farmers Federation President Hamish McIntyre. He said, "If these settings are not fit for purpose, we risk decreased investment, delayed succession, increased debt burden and, in some cases, forced sales of farmland to meet the increased tax liability." These farms are often the result of generations of savings. They are the legacy left for children and for grandchildren, and they are ultimately the family business. But under these reforms, together with the sneaky new death tax and the raid on family trust, keeping these businesses in the families has become even harder. Included in this is the broken promise that assets bought before 1985 would never attract capital gains tax. I have had constituents who have written to me to say that these changes will not help the young people to buy their own home. They will instead entrench intergenerational inequity by denying those who don't already own a home the mechanics enjoyed by older generations to do so. One constituent has told me that while he lived in his entire life in Australia, these toxic new taxes are now forcing the family to think about leaving the country. How bad is it that an Australian family are considering leaving the country to escape the huge burden of new taxes? A Moree accountant has called the capital gains tax reform a contemptible change that will hurt lower-income Australians the most. He gives an example where the reform will add 11% to the capital gains tax paid by the sale of a house that makes an inflation-adjusted gain of just $100,000. Already, we are seeing the result of these reforms before they've even arrived. Auction clearance rates and volumes are down and rents are up. So much for helping younger generations. Christian from Forbes in my electorate of Parkes is a young man who is trying to live his dream with his agricultural contracting business. Christian came to Question Time last month and was infuriated by what he heard from those on that side of the House. In Christian's own words, and I'll quote these tax reforms do more damage than good, especially for those of us who are young and taking risks to run a business and trying to get ahead. And I'd like to read the rest of what Christian had to say as a young Australian who these tax hikes are meant to benefit. I'm losing faith in the system in a big way. I don't see the Prime Minister or any minister out there with me 20 to 23 hours a day in peak season helping, but they rob us blind of our work and our money. I am a farming contractor. I bought machinery to generate a turnover to build an asset portfolio to get into land ownership. Negative gearing was a great way to get there and to build up a portfolio. Unless you come from a family money or inheritance, which I've no doubt they are also trying to come after as well, you can't really get into it. They have no support for young people or understanding. They are robbing many young people like me trying to get into farming, and they don't care. I feel support for younger generation is at an all-time low. Well, Deputy Speaker, if our young Australians feel this way, we are attacking the savings of our older generations also, then what is this tax grab all about? Should this younger generation manage to battle their way through the forest of hurdles and the cost of living increases and taxes to find an affordable home, they will be prevented from investing later on themselves due to the very same capital gains reform that we're here looking at today. They too, our newer, hard-working generation, are being hit at every turn. Financial Services Council analysis shows the reform, and I quote, could materially increase taxes on Australians investing outside superannuation, including younger Australians, families, part-time workers and Australians approaching retirement. Its modelling shows that under these reforms, a 25-year-old Australian on a median income investing $10,000 in shares would pay more tax. A median income young family investing $40,000 in a balanced managed fund would also pay more tax. A 35-year-old professional on an above-median income investing $60,000 in high-growth managed funds would pay more tax. And a 46-year-old operations manager on above-median income investing $110,000 to build financial security and safety would also pay more tax. And the modelling also showed that people on low income would also pay more tax on even modest investments. Deputy Speaker, people who have dreams, another great Australian tradition, and want to fund their own business now need to think twice. The risk is now 47% higher, and the end benefits are less. Deputy Speaker, I support Schedule 3, the Working Australian Tax Offset, and Schedule 4, the $1,000 standard deduction for working-related expenses. I do not support these changes to the capital gains tax regime or the changes to the negative gearing regime. How workable is a scheme that only rewards new builds? Where is the incentive to continue to cherish and maintain our older, beautiful homes?
I'm sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to draw the House's attention to that there was an unparliamentary remark made by the member for Nichols, and it would assist the House if you withdrew.
To assist the House, I withdraw.
Thank you.
But in its usual attack on the Australian people by stealth, the Labor government has wrapped these two small sweeteners in with what is otherwise a rotten bundle. And there is another worm at its core: the power allocated to the minister of the day, a popular theme within this Labor government. This bill also notes the minister may, by legislative instrument, determine a method of appropriating capital gains and losses between rationalisation events and earlier deemed CGT events. The minister can also, by legislative instrument, determine one or more kinds of CGT assets to be covered by subsection 2. To what extent do we want the minister to be doing the sums on our family's personal assets? Here again is by stealth, by legislation from the Labor government. Deputy Speaker, once again I refer to the values we treasure as Australians: honesty and integrity. It is lost here in this legislation and the promise that came before. Bravery and hard work. Where is the incentive to take the brave leap to start a new business? And where is the reward of decades of hard work? And mateship, Deputy Speaker. This is not the work of a mate. This is not the work of a leader. Australians cannot rest easy at the end of a long day with tax reform changes such as these ones hanging over their head. You are taxed when you make your first dollar, when you invest and when you buy your first home, or maybe your second home, or when you invest for your children. You're taxed on your superannuation you have earned despite being taxed all the way through your life. And you're even taxed now when you die. What will be left for our children at the end of the day? The Coalition has a plan, a solid way forward, a tax-back guarantee. From 2028-29 financial year, a Coalition government will index the bottom two income tax thresholds to inflation, protecting around 85% of income earners and delivering relief for around $250 in the first year. This will grow to be more than $1,000 a year by year 4. And from 2031-32, the top two thresholds will also be indexed, protecting all taxpayers. This can be done if you stop the cycle of inflation at its source. These taxes were an attack by stealth at a time when Australians can least afford it. We had values once that were supported by a government of this country. It is time, once again, that our legislation supported what it means to be an Australian.
Hear, hear.